Hello everyone. This week I'm going to be painting some Christmas baubles using the bokeh effect. You may have heard of it in relation to photography, where it's a technique used to slightly blur the picture and create sort of circular lights throughout the whole thing. And this can be imitated using watercolour, and so the result, I think, lends itself really well to Christmas and all wintry scenes. So I'm going to have a go at that today. I've done others that I can show you earlier as well. There's a lot to do, so I'm going to get straight on. And I've got 3 baubles that I'm going to paint in my picture, and I'm going to make them all red. I've masked off the shiny areas, so then I used a template to create the circular shape. So I'm going to have 3 red baubles, varying tones. So the smaller one's going to be the lighter tone, so I'll start at the top so I don't work over myself. And I'll talk you through the effect that I'm going to use when we get to it and as we go along. But right now I just want to paint these baubles in. So I've got various reds here, but if you did a similar thing, obviously use whatever red you fancy, or in fact whatever colour you fancy. I'm working wet on wet with this particular one because I want it to be quite pale and sort of a little bit more distant. Don't worry too much if you go over the edge of the shape, because when I pop the background on, I can make sure that looks better. So I'm using a size 8, series 8 designer brush, which has a lovely point but is lovely and fat and will hold a lot of water. So I may use this brush throughout, we'll see. So if you've put masking fluid on at any time with anything, make sure you paint right over the top of it so that when you remove it, you're going to get the marks that you wanted in the first place. Okay, so lift off a little bit of light one side and maybe pop a little bit of depth in as well under here. I can go back and put a bit more depth in, I think, and it will work better once I've allowed it to dry. But all of that helps it to look a little bit more rounded. I looked fairly carefully at my bauble to see where the lights and the shine is. Now this one I want to make slightly deeper colour. So use the flat of your brush to get the shape that you need. Don't use the point of your brush for everything. There we are. Steady hand needed really. But as I say, don't worry if it goes over the edge. We're going to put a nice background around here. There we go. So, slightly more depth, I think. If you work in the direction that you actually see the shape of whatever it is you're painting, then it always helps. So need to pop a little bit more depth on there now. In fact, on these baubles it really does sometimes look really quite dark. So I think I will have to go back and touch that up, but it's giving a start anyway. And some really dark areas in them, as you can probably see on this one. It depends on where it's sitting and what it's picking up from elsewhere. But I'll certainly get lots of lovely light in there, I think, with my masking. Right, now this one's got to be really bright and nice and dark. So, a bit more pigment going on here now. I'm trying to get variation. That one's gone very light, so I may need to just glaze over that one again. But at least it's giving me a start. Sure, I can see a face on here already. There we are. I've wetted it nicely. So load your brush. Popped a little bit of a purple in with the red this time, just to give it a little bit more depth and a different tone of red. That's quinacridone purple, a lot of alizarin in this one as well, but some cadmium as well because it's opaque and will create a lovely strong red, hopefully. Cad-free red. Right. Tried not to hurry that too much, it's not looking bad. I quite like that little bit of light that's left there quite naturally, so probably leave that. Because they're sitting in the same area, they're picking up similar light and dark shapes from the surroundings, so at least it keeps it together and not look too unvaried and too random. There we go, so nice light coming from the window this on the left hand side. So that's actually going to dry up, I think. Slightly lighter than that, and so I may have to go over again, but that's fine. That would be the glazing technique, that one definitely, yes. But I'll go on now and just paint one of these little fixings, and I've got some quinacridone yellow, or no, I think it was cadmium yellow, and I've put a little bit of gold gouache in it to give it a little bit of a shine, but I don't think you'd see that on the camera. Using quite strong paint, not terribly watery, which also allows me to carry on and not allow it to bleed too much into the bauble shape. But it's going to have some depth on there as well. You'll have time to allow particular areas to dry if you did a similar thing. Perhaps I'm taking a few chances here. But I've got some gold gouache out, which I'm mixing, as I said, with my cadmium yellow. This is all going to mingle with the background when we get to it anyway. So taking a little bit of light off the front, popping a little bit of blue in there to give a little bit of shape to that little fixing. Right, I'm going to have to stop and allow this to dry before I can actually do anything else. Right, my baubles are dry-ish, and now I need to pop a background down. So I've completely wetted the background area and hope that will stay wet before I get to the end. To save time, and I've mixed up some purples and some greens and lots of lovely, which are lovely Christmassy colours. Probably use a little bit of red again as well. So it's all lovely and juicy, and that's what we need for the background. So I'm sort of indicating a Christmas tree, but not very, very precisely. But I can maybe go over the top if I feel I need to afterwards. I'm really just concentrating on getting a nice background so that I can show you the bokeh effect. So just indicating some branches of Christmas tree. But I want to completely cover the background. So I'm using different colours, and I also want to keep it quite deep in colour as well. So while my paint is lovely and juicy, that it's got quite a lot of pigment in it, which is something you'll need to do. And all these colours are going to mingle together and make nice tones for me. Now I've got to be careful about working around my bauble shapes, which I try to keep dry. Don't be afraid to turn your paper around so that you can manage better to get the shapes that you need. So I'm going to speed up the camera while I do this because it's going to take a while. Right, okay, so that's the background in. There's no need to tip it because I'm quite happy with the way it's actually just made the marks that I particularly needed. But I've got to now allow that to completely dry. I haven't taken the masking off the baubles yet because I want to give them another coat. It's better to allow it to dry naturally, but I'm going to put the cold hairdryer on it to speed things up. Not the hot setting, because masking fluid doesn't like the heat. It reacts badly to the heat and you may not be able to get the masking off. But I'm going to risk it and you put the cold hairdryer on. So I'll just stop while I dry this off. Okay, not completely dry as yet. I've given the baubles another coat, so it's just one very light watery glaze, and while it's still slightly damp, I'm going to actually just put in a little bit of the impression of some tree branches, using my sword brush and just using a very loose technique just to create the idea of some branches. This is something that can be done while we're waiting for the background to dry completely, which of course it must. I don't want to cover too much of my lovely colourful background area. So I may have to limit the amount of branches that I put in here. But just loosely indicate a few branches, I think. Oh, I keep dropping the baubles in the way. I had to take the bauble out of the way so that I could turn the thing round. So I think I'll just keep the branches at the top of the page, and the strings would go obviously all up to the same sort of branches here. But that's just giving a nice impression of some greenery here. The sword brush is really good for just making simple marks like this, little loose marks. Right, I think that's all I'm going to do. Maybe I'll just bring this through a little bit here. So, nice dark green that's going to show up. It doesn't have to be too strong. That's worked okay. So that's the branches in. I've now got to stop and allow it to dry again. Okay, so I've put another layer of red on each one of the baubles and gone over the shine a little bit here and there just to create a different tone of shine. And I've actually put some depth of colour in as well. So now for the bokeh effect. I did actually try to create with my phone on my Christmas tree last year this kind of effect. Didn't do too good a job, but I think you can sort of get the idea of what it is we need to achieve this time. But it certainly can be done, and I guess some of you are good photographers and know exactly how to do it. I'm afraid I don't. So anything can be used. So we've got to cover this now with circles. Anything can be used that has a circle. In the past I've used things like this, which is just a little roll of tape. Old CDs have a very nice circle inside. You can get various stencils, which I've used in the past, those two. But actually this year I've splashed out and bought several of these for class. And this is what I'm going to use today. So you can get these online or in art shops. You can also buy stencil brushes, which work really well. But I actually cut down a child's paste brush, and it's working exactly the same way, and cut it level. You need lots of tissue ready, because we're going to need tissue. And I'm going to put a piece of toweling on my lap to keep the stencil nice and dry. Okay, so here goes. So I'll start at the top, and it is a matter of choosing the size that you want, wetting your brush, but also taking the excess water off so that it's just damp. And then what we're doing is really just brushing away the colour and lifting it out. So this is why you need the tissue to then dab. Make sure you use a good paper, because if you don't, you're going to tear the paper, and that's not a good thing to happen when you've actually put all the effort into actually create a nice picture. You can use freehand to make your circles, but it'll be much more difficult. I think you need to have a template of some description. Okay, and the patting really helps to get exactly what you want. So you can put as few or as many circles in as you wish. I like putting lots together, especially at the top of a page, but maybe spreading them out more as you come down, using different sizes. And I also like overlapping them. And you get quicker as time goes on. If you don't put so much pressure on, you're going to get a circle or a shape that has some colour still left in it, which is nice. So you can control it and vary it to an extent. But I've done quite a little bunch in this corner because there's nothing else happening in that corner, so it's actually quite nice to put lots there. But I'm actually going to be brave and put it all over. So I'm going to speed up while I do it, otherwise I'll be here all day. Well, I will be here all day, but I won't be taking your time. There we are, Bokeh Baubles. Now at this point you can go back and you can touch areas up if necessary. You can put more depth into the branches. You can get your white gouache out and tidy up the shiny areas. You can splatter it with white, whatever you want to do at this stage. And the other thing you can do with this technique is, when this is dry, the area that I've just stenciled, you can actually paint over the top of some of these to create, with a glaze, very light watery glaze, to create different colours over the top. But I'm not going to do that on this one, but there we are. That's the bokeh effect. And I've got one or two others that I've done this week for you and for class, so you can see what else can be done and to give you other ideas. I really do think it lends itself very well to Christmas. So here's another Christmassy one. And that's using salt on the background as well, and some splattering. Okay, so the process is exactly the same. You draw, you paint, pop the background on, and then do the bokeh stenciling, and then touch up at the end. It's another candle one. And the other thing you can do is to use your stencil to paint the colour inside. You can make these circles reasonably well freehand when you're actually using paint, but you can also use the stencil to paint inside as well to get the shape that you want. So the little robin that I did. So that's another idea. I quite like the colours on that one. And he stands out quite well against a lighter background. And there's a small amount of splattering on there. And I did the branches in the same way that I showed you just now, using a sword brush. You can use just one sort of tone to create a snowy picture. That one I think worked quite well. That doesn't fit, but anyway. And there's salt on that one as well. And the bokeh effect on the lighter area, using the stencil to take the colour out, didn't actually work terribly well, so I just used colour, but it would have been better white, I think. If you're not into Christmas, you could use create a wintry scene using something like this, these colours, and creating, you know, little dried teasels and grasses and seed heads and things, and pop a bit of snow on the top. You've got a little wintry picture. Okay, so that's the bokeh effect, and I hope you enjoy having a go with it, and I'll look forward to seeing what you do. Take care. Bye bye.